Wavical is an award-winning data and analytics company based in Chicago with a national presence. As a provider of award-winning cloud data, analytics, and AI solutions and services, Wavical combines deep technical expertise and industry knowledge with the proprietary automation tools to support the rapid shift to modern data architectures, real-time insights, and AI. Wavical Data Solutions is proud to grow through almost 100% referral. With solid delivery reputability, proudly leveraging the ability to meet clients where they are to unlock the power of data. Wavical Data Solutions.
Hello, I'm Dr. Beverly Wright, and welcome to Tag Data Talk. With us today, I am thrilled to have, finally, Marcy, you're so overdue on being on this podcast. Marcy Cunningham, Head of Information Governance at IHG Hotels and Resorts. Thanks for being here, Marcy.
Oh, thank you for having me. I'm really excited about it.
Very nice. So tell us a little about yourself. Why are you so cool? Besides your neat boots, we got to say something about the boots here.
Well, thank you. Let's see. I probably wouldn't normally put that label on myself, but given our audience, I will say I'm cool because I loved data before data was cool.
Oh.
I've been in this field a long time, started technologist in general, but quickly found a love for data. I've had an opportunity to work for some great companies, Home Depot, Teradata, and now IHG Hotels and Resorts. And I did my first job out of school was for the Florida Lottery, which is a really fun experience. Yes.
Oh, I know some people at Scientific Games, and they say it's a fun experience.
Yes. They were a great partner for us then. But it's really been an exciting journey to kind of work as part of our technology and data teams at IHG, but then also kind of with this recent role of information governance. I actually work in our business reputation and responsibility organization, which looks out for, the reputation of our brand and making sure we're doing the right thing for our customers. And so it's been a great opportunity to kind of learn the business from a different perspective.
Brand equity is everything. I mean, it's so crazy how much it matters.
Yeah. Oh, totally.
Yeah. Interesting. What is it you love so much about data? I have to ask you that follow-up question.
I just get so excited about the opportunities, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I guess back to the cool thing, I've just always known it had such potential and such power. So whether it's making, a guest experience better or, you're helping a child who has a condition that's not been discovered before.
Right.
Any of the things, it can be very personal or it can be kind of very broad for a company. I love it. It's like a puzzle. You're constantly trying to figure out the puzzles.
Yes, I love that. Thank you so much. I've forgotten you were at Teradata too. So very interesting. So we're talking about a topic that I absolutely love right now because AI is all the rage. And so everybody's talking about AI. And when we had a prep call, you said, hey, we need to talk about back to basics. So we're talking about back to basics, essentials for product development in the age of AI. And we're trying to get we're trying to get data, and we're using AI to do so. We're trying to get it into the hands and really into the eyes of these consumers to make more data-inspired decision-making. But some of the issues are that we're not doing the basics. Yeah. What do we mean by that? What does that mean, the basics?
Yeah, I think, and there will be some components we very much touch on the AI piece of it. But when we talk about just being more data driven as organizations, it really gets to a point where there are various kind of stakeholders across the company who now want to leverage data. They also understand and get excited about the opportunity it can have to help make them more efficient or better or achieve their goals. But yet they don't have all these years of kind of the discipline behind it. And I feel like some of those basics are things like just having business context for data, understanding what something is. Is there a difference between a loyalty member or someone who stays with us? Or is there a difference between, a reservation and
a stay or something.
A stay,
Yeah.
exactly. There's actually quite a bit of difference.
Right.
Can be quite a difference between the two. So
Go ahead.
I was going to say, so it's having that context for people who aren't used to having to think in that way. It becomes super important, and that kind of verges into quality and things like that, which become much more important on the AI side as well.
Well, what I was going to hint about is you're talking about a different audience, really. It sounds like with AI, we're experiencing a completely different group of people. Whereas before, we actually, Shannon Harlow and I call it convergent and divergent.
Oh, yes. I've talked to Shannon about this before. I love that.
So the convergent is that, data and then SQL and then BI and analytics and then modeling and now AI. And so if you've been through that journey and those steps in that process and you've advanced, you've got enough context that when you're leveraging AI, if something's not right, you kind of know it.
Yeah.
You have a sixth sense. But you're saying nowadays with AI making things more user-friendly, which is a good thing. We're not saying it's not a good thing. It's a great thing. But now we're dealing with this divergent nature of it where we're pulling in stakeholders that are leveraging AI, but they don't have those steps. They haven't experienced a model that failed because you put the Y on the X side, or they don't have the knowledge and the subtext of having gone through that.
Yeah.
And so do you think that's the kind of maybe the root of where this challenge is coming from?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a big part of it. And that's actually one of the things I've learned about, working in different parts of our company is I'm like, oh, I didn't realize I was using terms others didn't understand, or I didn't realize that I had all this context and or experience that would lead me to making choices about whether or not something was good or bad or usable or not usable, or the fact that I might need to drill down or look at it from a different angle. It's just not something that is part of the DNA of a lot of the stakeholders of the data now.
So me and you talking would be different, but it sounds like you're saying that now, because of AI, we have natives and immigrants. Is that accurate? Like we have natives and immigrants of the data?
Yeah. I mean, I find myself like doing a translation on a regular basis.
Yeah, I see. So that's made that where you've had to sort of go back. Now I see why you're saying I have to go back to basics, because the things that are presumptuous for me and you may not be so for these new group of users, these new immigrants.
Yeah.
So what kind of basics are we sort of, they may not understand the statistics that are going behind the scenes, or they may not understand certain factors. Tell us what those basics are.
So I think there are some, statistics and those aspects behind it, but I think there's even a deeper level than that. I think it does come back to like business context for the data and key characteristics about the data. I've thought a lot about this because I do think it's important, especially for those of us who have been in the field for a while, to not just say, well, we're doing this because we've always done it and this is what you do. It's 2 + 2 for us to some degree.
Right.
But I don't love questioning things like 2 + 2, but then I also think we should test ourselves to make sure these things are still valuable. And I, again, just have discovered in conversations and working with different teams that there's just that having that base understanding of the data and what that means and the business context for it is just something you have to have. And I also kind of equated it just over time and thinking about it comes back to your kind of our title a little bit, products, right?
Right.
And you would never think about creating a physical product that you were not capturing certain characteristics and attributes about that.
Of
you
course.
have to know, how you're going to manufacture it, how you're going to create it, what type of place does it need to be stored? How
what
big
kind of
is
materials?
Is it sensitive? Is it diamonds? You need to protect it in a certain way. And you need to make sure that then when a consumer goes to find that, they can find what they need. It's just like it's such a basic concept when we think about physical products. It really shouldn't be any different than for data. We're just trying to make it that easy for the people who need to leverage it to understand what it is they're getting. Is it going to meet their needs? Is it fit for purpose from a quality perspective?
Right.
And so that's what I really mean when I'm thinking about those basics and those characteristics. It's just making sure that we are giving all the right context and characteristics of that data. So when you as a data consumer, not a guest, but a data consumer need to use it, that you know what you're getting, and you can be as independent as possible when you get to that point.
Love it. Very interesting. So I like your analogy of physical, tangible products, and like we would never do that. Yeah. We would never say like, oh, I don't know where the supply chain is going to come. Like we would obviously know exactly where the supply is going to come from, and the quality of that. And we talked about data quality. You hinted about that. I'll come back to that in a second. But as an example, a couple years ago, this was a big company. They were a great client in the end, but they wanted us to better understand customer experience and loyalty. And so we came up with a business problem. We came up with a hypothesized model. We said, okay, this is what you're going to need. Where's the data? And they gave us sales data. And somehow they knew, in their head, they said, this is the data, so go tell us about customer experience and customer loyalty. And so there's that sort of mismatch with not understanding, like, what kind of data is even needed. And it sounds like that's a part of it. It's like the business context, understanding the actual data, and then you talked about quality of data. So tell us more about that.
Yeah, I think quality of data is like, there's a love-hate relationship with that, because everybody can intuitively say, oh, of course you need good quality data. But, in our world, people say things like garbage in, garbage out.
Right. But what does that mean, right?
Yes. Yeah. And frankly, when it comes down to quality, we're thinking about fit for purpose. Like, again, kind of just revisiting that reservation and stay a little bit, right? If you made a reservation but you don't actually stay, you can't use the reservation to sum up what all your revenue is, because you may or may not have people may not have gone through with a stay. And so those are just things that I think are part of making sure you give some characteristics around what that data represents,
right,
such that then the consumer of it can do their best to understand it. I also think there's a little bit of like helping to qualify what you can do and can't do, or what maybe has not been explored. And you just want to give enough ticklers that you can then still have conversation. We're not saying everything won't require some subject matter experts to kind of embed in it, but I think especially this is kind of, I think, where we start to hit on the AI components a little more. When you're making decisions at that volume, you can get way out of whack quickly.
This is at scale. Everything is at scale at this point.
And you can read the news, on a daily basis to find those examples of where some pretty severe things for companies have happened because of that. So I think just that is another piece where if you're not kind of thinking about quality seriously, you can end up in a just not where you intended.
Yeah, no kidding. So. And just a little tiny bit off over and over and over and over.
Yes, exactly.
And then you deal with big numbers, it's problematic. Yeah. And I think about too, like as a data scientist and the years that I've done, modeling, you have to really interrogate the data. I mean, interrogate it. You almost assume evil from the data, and you have to prove that it's good and it's right. And maybe it sounds like you're saying these immigrants don't know to do that, and so we're having to that's why we're having to go back to basics.
Yeah.
Does that seem?
Yeah, I think that's right. It's right, and you should be doing it anytime you have kind of a new use of data, evaluating to make sure it really is. But
right.
I think there's a point in there too that I kind of wanted to make around. There are producers of data, right, within the company, and one of the really exciting things about all of this is that their products that they're creating are now being used by so many different people and teams across the company.
Yes,
and And this is an opportunity to say where maybe we haven't always been able to kind of really have kind of intense kind of quality rule sets and monitoring in place. This is a real opportunity to put some of that in place,
Right.
such that you can operate at scale. There's some efficiency components in there as
Gotcha.
well, which is another big just kind of win. I
Right.
think,
Yeah. It makes
as
sense.
part of
That makes
this.
sense. Well, and you talked about terminology too. And tell us more about that. Like, what are your thoughts on, when we go back to basics and we have to think about the terminology, like a reservation versus a stay or, those kind of terms? Like, tell us more about, do you think there's a little bit of a lax with people not thinking about exactly what that variable is?
Of course.
Yeah, there is.
And I do think, we do things where, and this is not just here, I've done this at other places as well, to at least like categorize things at a high level, right?
Yeah.
A customer. And then you have breakdowns of that where you have, loyalty members, non-loyalty members. Frankly, our owners are also customers.
Oh.
And so really trying to give them tools at a high level, tags, again, to help prompt some of that thinking, characteristics, right? I would not have known that, I don't know, I wanted a pre-lit Christmas tree.
Yeah.
Except that all of a sudden I'm like, oh, this one says pre-lit, this one doesn't say
Right.
pre-lit. That's probably something I should, think about. And so I think some of that very basic terminology so that you're also not overcomplicating the process is important to prompt the thinking, and then just mature that over time,
Right.
as new use cases come into play, as the business starts to leverage it in different way, just make sure that that's a constant curation
Right.
process.
You talked a little bit about if you're not careful and you're not thinking about the basics, sometimes you can be off a little and then a little, and it's almost just keeps exacerbating itself because of the volume of some of these big companies. But are there other challenges or big problems or issues that happen as a result of not really thinking through just the basics?
I think the other thing, frankly, I always say, and in my current role, again, in information governance, what we do is think about both the value of data and then certain risk associated with it, and,
Right.
and how to balance those decisions within the company.
Yeah.
But I always have in my little risk list, the biggest risk for the company, from a data perspective,
Sure.
is not leveraging our data to help us achieve the objectives of the company.
Right.
We have to do that in a thoughtful way. It is making sure we're thinking about the risk, et cetera, as we make those decisions. Super important given our industry. But if we are not making that data findable. Is that a real word? I'm
Or
not
the
sure.
center of the decision,
Well,
like just a part of it.
I guess if I'm going back to like the big risk of not using the data,
Yeah.
if you can't find the data, you don't know how to. You're not going to be able to use it.
Right.
And so I think again back to like the making sure you've got those key characteristics about
Yes.
the data, such that those who need to find it know how to find it, or even know it exists in some cases.
So there's all kinds of not little, but there's all kinds of problems and issues that can happen.
Yes.
I'm going to be, straightforward. It's problematic. Like giving incorrect answers, answering the wrong problem or the wrong questions, or, not addressing the right opportunities. But the biggest thing is to just not even use data and just follow your gut.
Yeah.
Is that
Can
what
you
you're saying?
imagine? That's it.
I know.
That would
Can you
be
imagine
a
that
really
today?
bad place to be in.
Yeah. That doesn't seem like a good idea.
But I think it's an undervalued practice
Yeah.
to do that. And it is just like we're not quite yet making the full connection between like how we think about physical products and how we
Right.
think about data and how important those characteristics are. You just wouldn't even question.
No, you wouldn't.
that.
Well, and that's a
And
great
so-
segue because I was going to ask, how do we get back to the basics? And it sounds like one of the ways is to think about data, not just as data, but you said data assets.
Yeah.
To really think about it as a product and an asset. What are some other key tips for how do we get back to basics?
I think I touched on this earlier when I talked about like the producers of data, right?
Yes.
This is like, for those of us in the field, this is like what we've been waiting for.
Right.
For a long time is for it to be able to be leveraged. And so I think to some degree, leveraging that excitement and recognizing, I don't know, if I stick with the product analogy, like this is from going from the local fair where you've got your new mug or jewelry or whatever it is out there to now you're selling on Amazon.
Yeah, you're big time now.
and that may not sound appealing to everyone, but the reality is it means your data has value.
Right.
And so if you're thinking about the fact that, oh my gosh, I get very pumped about the fact that, my data is now going to be leveraged by all these different parts of the company, I think it's easier to get behind the fact that you then want people to be able to find it. So I think there's just like a shift in mindset there. And if we start to think about it from that standpoint, you get really excited about, helping others find it. I think the other thing too.
Just to make sure I play that back.
Yeah.
It sounds like you're saying that it's not enough just to start leveraging it and making better decisions, but you also have to show your excitement. And so maybe there's an advocacy play here too. Like, do we have a responsibility to kind of advocate and champion for our data?
Yes. And I think, at least when you're thinking about it in that asset-like model, you've got people who kind of own it and have some responsibility for making sure that others in the company can leverage it. And so there actually is a promotion aspect to it as well. So I think the other thing that I was thinking about is there is something about making that process not too cumbersome.
Yeah.
There's some just, again, like I may have talked to this earlier, but just making sure that you're kind of getting those most important characteristics.
Right.
And then just having it become part of your DNA, that you are embedding this into the way that you work. It's just a common, principle. And you just build on that over time. Those characteristics just start to develop, and you can even make that like a community effort as well, that there are others who want to kind of add tags in that have helped them find that data, et cetera. So
nice.
I think it becomes very powerful when you start to see that.
I see
that happen.
Okay, so some of the ways that you were saying we can overcome and kind of go back to basics are, number one, think about your data as an asset, as a product. Think about how you would handle it if it were an actual tangible thing. That's definitely a great one. Second is we've been waiting for this day, and we're excited.
Yeah.
I remember when I graduated, Marcy, there were 6 people getting decision sciences degrees. That's it, 6. And now there's like hundreds.
I think we were right about in the same time.
Yeah, there's hundreds in one program at one school, and there were 6. There were probably about 15 in the whole country. So now our day has come, and people are valuing data, and so we need to show some excitement. It's not enough just to leverage it and produce good models. We have to actually advocate for it and become a champion.
Yeah.
And then thirdly, I'm not going to use the term frictionless or completely frictionless, but at least try to make the processes more palatable and try to make it what Monica Kodersky, she was on Tag Data Talk. She talked about it being business as usual.
Yeah.
How to make leveraging data BAU.
Yep.
Just a regular thing. It's not some, ta-da, here I go, I'm going to use data. Like, it should be a part of what you're doing.
And that's where I was going with that DNA comment, right? If it just becomes part of the culture and part of the way that you work, it makes such a difference.
Yeah. Go ahead. I was going to say, what final piece of advice, you're probably about to give that, what final piece of advice would you give, Marcy, for helping people really get back to basics, thinking about the essentials of product development in the age of AI?
I'm going to stick with, this is a passionate group of people who have been in this field for some a long time, some not a long time, right? I even actually at the tag event That was last night. I got something from someone who was fairly new in the field and just talked about how they've navigated because they knew that there were such great outcomes,
Yes.
in front of us. And I would just say, if you're a business partner who's trying to leverage data, stick with those data people.
Yes, yes.
Because they want so badly to help you use it. And I think for the data people, just know that like this is your moment. We're
Right.
super passionate about making sure that it can be used. I find that I'm going to say more so in this field than I have with others. And so the final one was maybe that collaboration. I just think is still going to continue to be important. That's maybe not the back to the basics, but in order to get back to the basics and kind of really get the value from it, I also think that the people who are using it should demand that we do these things for them. So.
I love it. I love it. So collaborate, bring people along in the journey, kind of have some empathy for others that don't quite know as much and maybe help them along and get immersed with each other's worlds, and we can all sort of bond as a community.
Yeah.
I love that.
Super powerful.
I think it's going to take that. That's what it's going to take. And more so, we got to kind of get it right now before it starts becoming even bigger, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Thank you so much to Marcy Cunningham, Head of Information Governance at IHG. Thank you for being with us on Tag Data Talk.
Thank you for having me.